The charcoal gray silk dress hung on my bedroom door, perfectly steamed and encased in protective plastic. On my dresser, the gift, a high-end drone Liam had gushed about for months, was wrapped in shiny blue paper with a silver ribbon. I had taken 2 vacation days from my job. I had reserved a hotel room close to the wedding venue. On the calendar in my kitchen, the date was circled with a bold red marker. Liam's wedding. I was prepped to be the dutiful, supportive big sister. I was prepped to beam for every photograph and deliver a heartfelt toast to the bride and groom. Then my phone chimed. It was a message from my Uncle Ben. "Maya, are you all right? I didn't see you at the ceremony last Saturday." I just stared at the text. The phone felt like a block of ice in my palm. I typed a reply, my fingers fumbling. "The wedding is next Saturday, Uncle Ben." The 3 little dots pulsed on the screen. Then came the simple, soul-crushing response. "No, sweetie. It was on the 11th. It's done." I didn't start crying, not right away. I just felt a bizarre, hollow sensation bloom in my chest, like a sinkhole opening up. I instinctively opened my social media apps. I hadn't looked in days, swamped with a project at work. And there it was, an avalanche of pictures. My mother, Caroline, carefully adjusting Liam's tie. My father, David, roaring with laughter, a champagne flute in his hand. The bride, Ashley, radiant in her white gown. Every single one of them was there, their faces lit with joy, looking utterly complete. There was no empty chair visible, saved in my honor. Not a single person looked as though they were missing a daughter or a sister. They hadn't just made a mistake with the invitation. They had fed me a fake date. They had systematically erased me from the most important day of their lives while I was here, at home, looking at a dress I would never get to wear. Something deep inside me didn't shatter. It just went utterly, profoundly silent. Before we get into what happened next, do me a favor and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. I didn't sleep a wink that night. I just sat in my dark living room, my eyes fixed on the boxy silhouette of the drone on the dining table. In the gloom, it looked less like a gift and more like a miniature tombstone. The next morning, the sun rose with insulting cheerfulness. The world kept spinning. I could hear the morning traffic building outside my window. Birds were chirping, but I was trapped in a time warp, replaying yesterday's discovery over and over. My brother was a married man. My family had thrown a party, and I had been at home, steaming a dress for a wedding that never was. I got dressed like an automaton. Jeans, a plain black t-shirt, running shoes, no makeup. I didn't have the will to paint a mask of normalcy over a face that felt so numb. I snatched my car keys from the hook by the door. I didn't bother calling to say I was on my way. I knew exactly where they'd be. Sunday mornings were a sacred ritual at the Pierce house. Pancakes, strong coffee, the Sunday paper, and quality family time. The drive to my parents' house usually took about 45 minutes. I'd normally listen to a tech podcast or a new album. That day, I drove in absolute silence. My hands were clamped around the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were bone white. I mentally rehearsed what I would say. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to sob. But more than anything, I just wanted an explanation that made a sliver of sense. When I pulled into their driveway, my heart felt like it was trying to beat its way out of my ribcage. 3 cars were parked there: my parents' minivan, my father's sedan, and Liam's brand new flashy SUV. The same SUV I had co-signed the loan for last year after he swore it was for his new business. The house looked like something from a magazine. The lawn was impeccably manicured. The flower beds were bursting with color. It was the house I grew up in, the place where I'd skinned my knees learning to ride a bike, the place I thought I would always belong. Now, it looked like a perfect movie set for a film I hadn't been cast in. I walked up the stone path. I had a key, a spare key tucked away under a fake turtle near the front porch. I didn't ring the bell. I simply unlocked the door and stepped inside. The first thing that hit me was the smell. Bacon, freshly brewed coffee, and the sweet scent of cinnamon. It was the smell of a happy, normal home. I walked down the familiar hallway towards the kitchen. I could hear their voices, relaxed and easy. "Pass the syrup, will you?" That was my dad, David. His voice was deep and calm. "Did you see the pictures Susan posted? The photographer she hired did a fantastic job." My mom, Caroline, said. Her voice was light and cheerful. "Yeah, it was a perfect day, seriously." "Couldn't have asked for better weather," Liam added. He sounded content, the happy exhaustion of a groom after his big day. They were at ease, they were completely guilt-free. They weren't whispering about poor Maya, who somehow missed the wedding. They were just having breakfast. I stopped in the archway leading to the kitchen. "Morning," I said. My voice was softer than I intended, but it sliced through the casual chatter like a razor. The silence that fell was immediate and absolute. Dad froze, his coffee mug halfway to his lips. Mom spun around from the stove, a spatula still in her hand. Liam, who had been scrolling on his phone at the center island, slowly looked up. For a long second, no one moved. Then Mom let out a breath, a soft hiss of inconvenience. "Maya, we weren't expecting you." She didn't say, "Oh my God, we feel terrible." She didn't say, "We need to explain." She just stated that my presence was a surprise. I stepped further into the room. I stood by the refrigerator, creating a physical distance between us. I felt like an intruder in my own past. "The wedding was yesterday," I stated. It wasn't a question. Liam placed his phone face down on the granite countertop. His expression wasn't one of shame. It was annoyance. He looked like a surly teenager caught cutting class. "Yeah," Liam said with a shrug. "It was." I looked at him. My little brother, the one I'd taught to tie his shoes, the one I'd tutored in algebra, the one I had bailed out of financial jams more times than I could remember. "My invitation says next Saturday," I said, keeping my voice as level as I could while my insides churned with acid. "I have the card on my fridge. November 18th. Yesterday was the 11th. Dad set his mug down with a soft click. He cleared his throat. "Maya, don't make a scene." "I'm not making a scene," I said, a hot flush rising in my cheeks. "I'm asking a simple question. Did you print a special, separate invitation just for me with a fake date?" Mom turned back to the stove and casually flipped a pancake. The sheer normalcy of the action made my blood boil. "It wasn't a special invitation, Maya. It was just a placeholder. We weren't 100% on the final date when we sent yours out." "That's a lie," I shot back. "Uncle Ben got his invitation months ago. 11. Jenna got hers. Everybody knew it was the 11th, everyone but me." Liam swiveled on his stool to face me directly. "Look, Maya, it's done, okay? It's over." "Why?" I asked, my gaze shifting from my mother to my father to my brother. "Just tell me why. I had a dress. I bought you a drone. I took time off work. Why wouldn't you want me there?" The room fell silent again, the only sound the sizzle of pancake batter hitting the hot pan. Mom switched off the burner. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and finally turned to face me fully. She wore an expression I knew all too well. It was the one she used when I was a child and being difficult. It was a look of strained patience, a blend of pity and irritation. "Honey," she began, her tone cloyingly sweet. "You know how you get. How I get? I repeated, my voice hollow. Intense, she said. You're just a lot. You have this way of making everything so serious. Everything has to be picked apart. Every decision has to be a big discussion. I'm thorough, I argued. I'm responsible. That's not the same thing. It's a mood killer, Liam interjected, picking up a piece of bacon. Honestly, Maya, we just wanted one day to be fun, no drama, no lectures about how much we were spending, no side-eyeing Dad's champagne intake. We just wanted to relax. The words felt like a physical blow. I wouldn't lecture you at your own wedding, Liam. Maybe not with words, Dad said, finally speaking up. He wasn't even looking at me. His eyes were on his newspaper. But we would feel it. You have an energy, Maya. It's critical. We just thought the day would be calmer without your intensity. You overcomplicate things, Liam added. He said it so matter-of-factly, as if stating a law of nature like gravity or the sun rising. We figured we'd just tell you later, say there was a mix-up. It would save everyone the stress. I looked at them, really looked at them. They didn't appear evil. They weren't villains from a fairy tale. They looked like perfectly normal people. My mother in her floral apron, my father in his golf shirt, my brother in his college hoodie. But their logic was monstrous. They had orchestrated this elaborate lie to exclude me because my very presence, my intensity, which was really just me trying to keep their chaotic lives from imploding, was an inconvenience to their party plans. I'm your sister, I whispered. We know, Mom said, walking over to pat my arm. Her touch felt like ice. And we love you, but sometimes family just needs a little break from each other. We'll have a nice dinner to celebrate next week. Just the four of us. It'll be better that way. She turned back to the counter. Do you want some pancakes? There's plenty left. I stood there, rooted to the spot, and in that moment, I realized I wasn't truly a member of this family. I wasn't in the inner circle. I was the support staff, the person they called when the car broke down, when the credit card was maxed out, when a bill was overdue. I was the janitor of the Pierce family, always on call to clean up their messes, but never invited to the gala. No, I said, I don't want any pancakes. Suit yourself, Liam muttered under his breath. I didn't storm out. My feet felt like lead. I was waiting for one of them to crack, for one of them to show a flicker of remorse. I was waiting for Dad to say, actually, this was a terrible thing to do. I was waiting for Mom to wrap me in a hug and apologize. But they didn't. They just resumed their breakfast. Dad asked Liam about their honeymoon flight to Mexico. Mom asked if they needed help packing. They had erased me yesterday, and they were erasing me again, right now, while I was standing 5 feet away. I stayed in the kitchen, leaning against the doorframe. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me was a glutton for punishment. Maybe I needed to see the full, unvarnished depth of their indifference before I could finally walk away. The anger was beginning to cool and harden into something else, something colder, more solid, like concrete setting in a mold. So, Liam said, wiping his mouth with a napkin. He looked over at me, his eyes suddenly bright with an idea. The guilt, if there ever was any, had completely vanished. He looked expectant. Since you're here, actually, it's perfect timing. I just stared at him. Perfect timing. Yeah, he said. Me and Ashley were talking, since we saved a bit on the venue by keeping the ceremony small. He paused, and he actually smiled at me. We were thinking about doing a big blowout weekend for all our friends next month. A post-wedding celebration, real casual, grilling, hiking, that kind of thing. I felt a muscle in my jaw jump. Okay. We want to use the mountain cabin, he said. It wasn't a question, it was a declaration. My mountain cabin. The cabin is being used, I lied. It wasn't. I kept it empty as my personal sanctuary, my place to escape. No, it's not, Mom chirped in. pouring more coffee. I checked your shared calendar. You have it marked down for maintenance, but we know that just means you're going up there alone to read or whatever. You can just move that. It's my house, I said, my voice low and tight. Oh, Maya, honestly, Dad groaned, putting his newspaper down for good this time. It's family property. You're just the one whose name is on the paperwork. I blinked. The room seemed to tilt. Family property? I asked. I bought it, Dad. I made the down payment with my own savings. I pay the mortgage every month. I paid for the new deck. I paid for the furnace replacement last winter. And we are so proud of you for being in a position to do that, Mom said, her tone utterly dismissive. But let's be realistic. It's the Pierce cabin. We've all been going there for years. It's basically in a family trust. It's not in a trust, I said. It's in my name, and only my name. Details, Liam said with a wave of his hand. The point is, Ashley really wants to host her friends there. It's got that rustic chic vibe she loves. We need it for the weekend of the 9th, so just make sure it's clean before then. Maybe get a crew to clear the roof? The pine needles were getting pretty thick last time I was up. He looked at me with pure, unadulterated expectation. He expected me to say yes. He expected me to arrange for it to be cleaned. He expected me to pay for the roof clearing. This was it. This was our dynamic, laid bare. This was the transaction. I was too intense to be invited to their sacred wedding ceremony, because I might bring them down with a dose of reality. But I was just useful enough to provide the luxury venue for the after-party. They didn't want me. They wanted my assets. They wanted my stability. They wanted my good credit. They wanted my mountain cabin. But they did not want me. I looked at Liam. He was 30 years old, but in that moment, he looked like a spoiled toddler demanding a shiny toy. You didn't invite me to your wedding, I said slowly. We already went over this, Liam groaned. It was a vibe thing, Maya. Don't be so petty. And now you want to use my house for a party I'm probably not even invited to? Of course you're invited, Mom said quickly. You can help host. You're so good at organizing everything. Help host, not attend, not enjoy, work. They wanted me to be the unpaid event planner. I turned my gaze to my father. Dad? You think this is okay? He just shrugged. Liam's just starting out, Maya. He has a wife now. He can't afford to rent a place like that. You can. It's what family does. We share. I share, I corrected him, my voice dangerously quiet. You take. The room went dead silent. Excuse me? Mom's voice was sharp, all pretense of sweetness gone. I said I share, and you take. That's the foundation of this family. I pay for Liam's car insurance. I paid off your credit card debt 3 years ago, Mom. I bought the cabin because you two lost the original family property after not paying taxes on it for 5 years. Remember that? That is enough, Dad roared, his face turning a blotchy red. You do not speak to your mother like that. You are proving our point right now. This attitude? This keeping score? This is exactly why nobody wanted you there yesterday. He jabbed a finger in my direction. You are the transactional one, Maya. You think your money buys you love? It doesn't. We are a family. We love each other. You're the one who turns everything into a spreadsheet. I just stood there, letting his words crash over me. Transactional. The projection was so blatant it was almost laughable. But I didn't laugh. Something inside my brain just clicked. It was like a heavy iron door slamming shut, sealing something off forever. The hurt, the sting of unshed tears, the deep-seated longing for their approval, it all just vanished. If they saw me as transactional, then fine, I would be transactional. If they saw me as nothing more than a resource, then I would finally act like one, a resource that had just been tapped out. You're right, I said. I made my voice eerily calm. I'm sorry. The tension in the room dissipated instantly. The tightness left Liam's shoulders. He even smirked a little. It's okay, Maya, Liam said, magnanimous in his victory. Just text us the new key code for the smart lock by next Friday, okay? And seriously, get someone to check that roof. I'll take care of it, I said. I turned on my heel and walked out of the kitchen. Bye, honey, Mom called after me, her voice sickeningly cheerful again. Drive safe. I walked out the front door and got into my car. I didn't cry. My hands were steady on the wheel. I started the engine and backed out of the driveway. I didn't head back toward my apartment in the city. I turned onto the interstate and pointed my car north. I was going to the mountain cabin. The drive took 3 hours. Normally, as the urban sprawl gave way to dense forests and winding roads, I'd feel a profound sense of peace. The cabin was my sanctuary. It was a modest, 2-story A-frame made of cedar, nestled on a ridge overlooking a vast valley. When I'd bought it 5 years ago, it was a dilapidated wreck. My parents had once owned a small cabin on a nearby plot, but they'd lost it to a tax lien because they'd forgotten to pay property taxes for years. I bought this place to try and rebuild that happy memory for them. I thought if I fixed it up, made it beautiful, they would finally be proud of me. I spent my weekends refinishing floors. I spent my work bonuses on new, energy-efficient windows. I taught myself how to install drywall from YouTube videos. I poured my soul into making it perfect. I pulled into the gravel driveway. The cabin stood there, quiet and majestic beneath the towering pines. I got out of my car. The air was crisp and smelled of pine and damp soil. It was the smell of my own sweat and hard work. I walked up the wooden steps and punched the code into the smart lock. The door beeped and swung open. Inside, everything was immaculate. The afternoon sun streamed through the large windows, illuminating the hardwood floors I had stained by hand. I didn't bother taking off my shoes. I walked straight to the small den I had set up as a home office. In the corner stood a tall gray metal filing cabinet. I wasn't here to clean or relax. I was here to work. I pulled open the top drawer of the filing cabinet. Inside were dozens of folders, neatly labeled, color-coded, perfectly organized. Liam, car loan, parents, credit card debt, cabin, deed title, cabin, renovation invoices. I pulled every single one out. I sat down on the floor, surrounded by a sea of paper. I picked up the main file for the cabin. I ran my finger over the deed. Owner, Maya Pierce. No trust, no co-signers, just me. I picked up the stack of receipts. General contractor, $25,000. Paid by Monsieur Pierce. Lumber supply, $4,500. Paid by Monsieur Pierce. Well, pump replacement, $3,800. Paid by Monsieur Pierce. Every single screw in this house was mine. Then I opened the folder labeled Liam, Loans. There it was, the promissory note he'd signed when I lent him money for that SUV. I, Liam Pierce, promised to pay back. He hadn't made a single payment. There were the credit card statements from when Mom had used my card to book a once-in-a-lifetime trip to Hawaii and swore she'd pay me back. She never did. I looked at the mountain of paper around me. This wasn't just paperwork. It was a detailed history of my own exploitation. They had the audacity to call me transactional. They had no idea. I had never chased them for this money because I thought this was just what family does. I thought I was earning my place at the table. I thought that if I was useful enough, they would have to love me. But yesterday proved that even if I gave them the world, I still wasn't worth a simple wedding invitation. I was only worth what I could provide. A cold, sharp clarity settled over me. I wasn't going to clear the roof for Liam's party. I wasn't going to unlock the door. I grabbed a large banker's box from the closet. I began stacking the files inside. I wasn't feeling sentimental anymore. I was collecting evidence. I packed every receipt, every email printout where they promised repayment, every bank statement showing a transfer from my account to theirs. I was done being the good daughter. I was done being the dependable sister. I stood up, the heavy box cradled in my arms. If they wanted to have a discussion about family property, we were about to have a very detailed look at the legal definition of that term. I carried the box out to my car and placed it carefully in the trunk. I went back and locked the cabin door. Then I took out my phone. I opened the app for the smart lock. Change access code. I typed in a new, long, random sequence of numbers, one they would never, ever guess. I got back in my car. The sun was beginning to set, painting the mountains in hues of orange and purple. It was breathtakingly beautiful. And for the first time in my life, I felt like it was entirely mine. I drove away, leaving the cabin silent, secure, and locked. The drive back to the city from the cabin felt completely different from the drive up. On the way there, I had been fueled by a volatile mix of adrenaline and raw anger. On the way back, I was driving with a trunk full of ammunition. The heavy banker's box shifted in the back with every curve in the road. It felt like I was transporting a quiet, powerful bomb. I arrived at my apartment building around 10 that night. My apartment was quiet. Usually that silence felt lonely, and I'd immediately turn on the TV for background noise. But tonight, the silence felt like a protective shield. I lugged the box inside and set it on my dining room table. I didn't open it. I knew its contents by heart. I made a cup of chamomile tea and sat on my sofa. I picked up my phone. I hesitated, then scrolled to a contact name, Jenna Sutton. Jenna had been my best friend since we were college roommates. She was my polar opposite. Where I was quiet, she was loud. Where I was a diplomat, she was a warrior. She had been telling me for years that my family was taking advantage of me. I had always brushed it off. I'd say things like, "You don't get it. That's just how they are. They need me." I realized now that Jenna had understood perfectly. I was the one who had been willfully blind. I pressed the call button. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey, I was just about to text you. I saw Ashley's posts from the wedding. It looked beautiful. Why didn't you tell me it was last weekend? I thought we were going together next Saturday." Hearing her voice, so normal and unsuspecting, made my throat constrict. "I didn't know either, Jenna," I said, and my voice finally broke. There was a beat of silence on the other end. "What do you mean you didn't know?" "They gave me the wrong date. I managed to get out. They told me it was the 18th. It was on the 11th. They didn't want me to be there." "I am on my way over," she said instantly. "No discussion." "Jenna, it's really late. I don't care. Unlock your door." The line went dead. 20 minutes later, Jenna was in my living room. She was in sweatpants and a hoodie, carrying a bottle of red wine and a family-sized bag of salt and vinegar chips. She didn't hug me right away. She just looked at me, her eyes scanning my face, assessing the damage. "Tell me everything," she said, her voice soft. We sat on the floor, and I did. I told her about the dress, about the drone, about the confrontation in the kitchen. I told her about the pancakes and how my mother had called my personality a mood killer. I told her about Liam demanding to use the mountain cabin for his party. When I got to that part, Jenna stopped mid-chew. She set her wine glass down on the coffee table with a thud. He asked to use the cabin, she repeated, her voice low and dangerous. After they deliberately uninvited you from the wedding? Yeah, I said. And my mom said it was family property. And what did you say? I told them I'd handle it, I replied. And then I drove up there, changed the locks, and brought back every single financial document I could find. I pointed to the box on the table. Jenna's eyes went from the box to my face. A slow, proud smile spread across her lips. Maya Pierce, she said softly. It's about damn time. I feel sick, Jenna, I confessed, hugging my knees to my chest. I feel like I'm betraying them. I'm taking their private papers. I'm locking them out. They're my parents. Liam is my brother. They betrayed you first, Jenna said firmly. She leaned forward. And this isn't just about hurt feelings anymore, Maya. This is about a lot of money. Real money. How much do you think you've given them over the years? I don't know, I mumbled. Yes, you do, she countered gently. You're a project manager. You live and breathe data. You know exactly how much. I closed my eyes, and the numbers started scrolling behind my eyelids. The down payment on the cabin, Liam's SUV loan, the credit card debt Caroline ran up, the multiple emergency loans for Dad's failed business ideas, maybe close to $200,000 over the last decade. Jenna let out a low whistle. That's a down payment on a house, Maya. That's a retirement fund. That is not helping out family. That is systemic theft by emotional manipulation. They always said they'd pay me back, I whispered. Did they? She asked. Or did they just say, we'll get you next time, and count on you being too nice to ever actually ask for it? She was right. I knew she was. I don't know what to do now, I said. If I say no about the cabin, they're going to lose their minds. They'll gaslight me. They'll tell the whole family I'm just being spiteful because I missed the wedding. They'll paint me as the villain. Let them, Jenna said. But you need to go into this battle with armor. You can't fight them with feelings. You need to fight them with facts and with the law. She pulled out her phone, scrolled for a moment, and then turned the screen to me. Isabella Rossi, she said. She's a bulldog. She handled my cousin's partnership dispute. She doesn't give a damn about family drama. She cares about contracts, property rights, and holding people accountable. You have to call her. I stared at the name. Isabella Rossi, attorney at law. A lawyer? I asked, the idea feeling monumental. To sue my own family? Not to sue, not yet, Jenna corrected. To protect yourself, you need a consultation. You need to know your legal standing. You need to know if they have any claim to the cabin just because they've stayed there. You need to know if those IOUs from Liam are even enforceable. She took my hand, her grip firm. Maya, look at me. They didn't invite you to the wedding because your presence is inconvenient to their fantasy. To them, you are a walking, talking bank account. If you don't close that account now, they will drain you dry. And when you have nothing left to give, they'll blame you for being poor. The image of my mother casually flipping pancakes while my world was collapsing flashed in my mind. We just thought it would be calmer without your intensity. My intensity. My desire for fairness. My need to be treated like a human being. I took the phone from Jenna's hand and saved the number. Okay, I said, I'll call her tomorrow. Good, Jenna said, pouring us both more wine. Now we're going to drink this bottle, we're going to watch a stupid action movie, and you are not going to answer a single text or call from your family. My phone buzzed on the table at that exact moment. A text from Liam. Hey, still need that new key code for the cabin. Ashley wants to go up early to scope out spots for decorations. No apology. No how are you, just a demand. I looked at Jenna. She just raised an eyebrow. I powered my phone off completely and set it face down on the table. "I'm done being the quiet one," I said. "Cheers to that," Jenna said, clinking her glass against mine. That night, I slept more soundly than I had in years. I didn't dream about the wedding. I dreamt about the mountains. The air was crisp and clear, and I was standing on the deck of my cabin, holding a single key that belonged only to me. The next morning, I called Isabella Rossi's office from my car during my lunch break. My hands were trembling, but my voice was firm. "I need a consultation regarding property rights and intrafamilial financial entanglements," I told the paralegal. "Can you bring any relevant documentation?" she asked. "Yes," I said, glancing at the heavy banker's box in my passenger seat. "I have everything." 2 days later, I took a half day off from work. I drove to a sleek downtown high-rise made of glass and steel. It was the kind of building designed to intimidate, the kind of place my father would despise because he couldn't just charm his way past the security desk. I checked in and was given a visitor's badge. I took the elevator up to the 35th floor. The doors opened into a quiet, minimalist lobby that smelled of new leather and ambition. A woman emerged to greet me. She was in her 40s, wearing a sharp black pantsuit, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. She looked like she didn't waste a single second of her day. "Maya?" "I'm Isabella Rossi," she said. Her handshake was like a vice. "Jenna told me the basics of your situation. Come on back." We walked into a large conference room with a panoramic view of the city. A man in a simple gray sweater was already at the table, a laptop open in front of him. "This is Mark Chen," Isabella said. "He's a forensic accountant we often work with. Since you mentioned significant commingled funds, I asked him to sit in." "A pleasure to meet you, Maya," Mark said. He had a kind, gentle face, but his eyes were razor-sharp. I heaved the heavy banker's box onto the polished mahogany table. It looked out of place, a shabby cardboard box in a world of wealth and power. "I brought everything," I said. "I'm a project manager, so I keep records." But I never really looked at it all at once. I just filed it away. "That's how it always starts," Isabella said, sitting down and opening a fresh legal pad. "This kind of family theft is built on a foundation of trust. You don't audit your own mother. You assume she has your best interests at heart. So," she continued, clicking her pen, "let's see what we're working with." For the next 3 hours, we excavated the financial history of my life. Mark took the lead, his fingers flying across his keyboard as he sorted my papers into neat piles: real estate, personal loans, credit card bailouts, business debts. I watched him work, a growing sense of humiliation washing over me. Every piece of paper represented a moment of weakness, a time I had said yes when I should have said no. There was the receipt for the custom off-road tires for Liam's Jeep. $2,200. He had called me from the mechanic shop, panicking that his card was declined and he was stranded. I'd paid for it over the phone. I later found out he'd spent the money in his bank account on tickets to a music festival. There was the wire transfer for my father's emergency tax payment. $15,000. Mark looked at the date on the transfer, then did a quick search on his laptop. "Maya," Mark said gently, "you sent this $15,000 on May 10th, 2021. Your father told you it was for an urgent IRS bill?" "Yes," I said. "He said they were going to put a lien on their house." Mark turned his laptop screen toward me. He had pulled up public records. "The only tax lien on your parents' property was filed in 2018 and cleared in 2019. In May of 2021, their tax record was clean." He clicked another tab. "However, on May 14th, 2021, your mother posted photos on Facebook from a last-minute anniversary cruise to the Caribbean." I stared at the screen. The dates were undeniable. He stole it, I whispered. He lied to me about the IRS so they could go on a cruise. Technically, Isabella interjected, her voice cool and precise. He solicited funds under fraudulent pretenses. We moved on to the cabin. This was the big one. I handed Isabella the deed, the mortgage statements, and the thick file of renovation invoices. She read through them in silence for nearly 15 minutes. The only sound in the room was the quiet hum of the building's ventilation. Finally, she looked up. "Maya, this is the most straightforward part of this entire mess," she declared. "My mother claims it's a family asset," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "She says that because they use it, they have a right to it." Isabella actually laughed. It was a short, dry, humorless sound. "Your mother can claim the sky is green, but that doesn't make it a fact," she said. "Look here." She pointed to a line on the deed. "Grantee, Maya Pierce, an unmarried woman, sole owner. There's no mention of a trust, no tenants in common, no joint tenancy with your parents. You are the only name on the title." She flipped to the mortgage documents. "Borrower, Maya Pierce. You are the only one obligated on the debt." She glanced at the stack of invoices. "You paid for the asset. You paid for the capital improvements. You pay the property taxes. Legally, unequivocally, and irrevocably, that cabin is yours and yours alone. If they step foot on that property without your express permission, they are trespassing. End of story." I felt a mountain of weight slide off my shoulders, only to be replaced by a new, heavier one. "They aren't confused," I said out loud. "They know it's legally mine. That's why they're nice to me right before they want to use it." "Precisely," Mark said. He slid a single sheet of paper across the table toward me. He had been running a tally. The number at the bottom of the page was circled in red ink. $187,350. "This is a conservative estimate of the direct cash transfers and debt payments you have made on their behalf in the last 8 years, Mark said. "This doesn't include lost interest or the opportunity cost of what that money could have earned in your own investment accounts." He looked at me with genuine pity. "Maya, you haven't just been a daughter. You've been their private bank. You have been funding their lifestyle while they've been treating you like a liability." I stared at the number. $187,350. I could have paid off my own condo. I could have traveled the world. I could have started my own consulting business. Instead, I had bought my brother a wedding gift for a wedding he didn't want me at. "You have been treated as a resource, not a relative," Isabella stated. She leaned back in her chair. "So, the question is, what do you want to do about it?" I looked out the massive glass window at the sprawling city below. Somewhere out there, my family was likely planning their party weekend at my cabin. They probably thought I was up there right now, meekly getting it cleaned for them. I thought about the empty space where I should have been in the wedding photos. I thought about the lie about the date. I looked back at Isabella. "I want it to stop," I said. "All of it." "Do you want to sue to get the money back?" Isabella asked. It would be an uphill battle, given the lack of formal contracts on many of these loans. But we could certainly apply pressure. "No," I said, shaking my head. "The money's gone. I have to accept that. If I sue, they'll just play the victim to the entire extended family." I took a deep breath. I want to cut them off completely. I want to secure the cabin so they can never set foot in it again. I want to make sure they can never touch my credit or my bank accounts. And I want them to know for a fact that the bank is closed. Isabella nodded slowly. She liked that answer. "Okay," she said. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to draft a formal cease and desist letter regarding the cabin property. We will explicitly state that any implied permission for them to access the property is hereby revoked. We will inform them that any unauthorized entry will be treated as criminal trespassing. And for the financials, Mark added, we're going to put a freeze on your credit. We'll formally remove you from any co-signed loans, and we will send a certified letter itemizing the outstanding debts, not as a demand for payment, but as a formal declaration that no future financial requests of any kind will be considered. It's going to be extremely aggressive, Isabella warned. They will not react well. People like this hate losing control. I don't care, I said, and for the first time, I truly meant it. Good, Isabella said, opening her laptop. Let's draft the notice about the cabin first. You said your brother wants to use it next weekend? Yes, the 9th. Isabella smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a predator. Perfect. We'll have it delivered by courier tomorrow morning. That should give him just enough time to cancel his caterer. I watched her fingers fly across the keyboard. Dear Mr. Pierce, for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to solve their problem. I was actively creating one. One more thing, I said. Isabella paused. Yes? Can we send a copy of everything to my Uncle Ben? I asked. He was the only one who told me the truth about the wedding. I want him to know what's happening. I want him to know the full story. Absolutely, Isabella said. We'll CC him on all correspondence. I leaned back in the leather chair. My hands were resting on the table. They were perfectly still. I was done paying for a seat at a table that didn't want me. It was time to build my own. Ready to sign? Isabella asked as the printer in the corner whirred to life. I stood up. I've never been more ready for anything in my life, I said. Never again, I whispered to myself as I reached for the pen. Never again. The following morning, the legal notices were delivered. Isabella had arranged for a bonded courier to ensure they were hand-delivered by 9 a.m. I went to work like it was any other day. My job as a project manager was my refuge. It was logical. It was orderly. Tasks moved from in progress to complete. Problems had protocols. It was the antithesis of my family life. I sat at my desk, pretending to focus on a Gantt chart. My personal phone was in my desk drawer, on silent. Around 9:20 a.m., it began to vibrate. A long, angry buzz against the metal drawer. Buzz, pause, buzz, pause. I didn't look. I knew exactly who it was. They had gotten the letters. They knew the cabin was off limits. They knew the free ride was over. I focused on my spreadsheet. I entered data. I replied to emails. I kept my breathing even and slow. You are safe, I told myself. You are legally protected. By 10:15, the buzzing stopped. For a moment, I thought the initial storm had passed. I thought maybe they were retreating to plot their next move. I was wrong. At 10:45, my desk phone rang. It was the front desk in the main lobby. Maya, it was Brenda, the receptionist. Her voice was strained. Your family is here. They're demanding to see you. They're being very loud. A familiar cold dread washed over me. The old instinct flared up. Run down there, smooth things over, apologize for them, keep them quiet, stop the scene. But then I remembered the box of files. I remembered the wrong date on the wedding invitation. Tell them I'm in a meeting, I said calmly. I tried that, Brenda whispered. Your father is yelling at the security guard. Maya, please. I sighed. I'm on my way down. I stood up, smoothed down my dress, and walked to the elevator. When the doors opened on the ground floor, I heard them before I saw them. The lobby of my building was a grand, echoing space of marble and glass. This is outrageous. I am her father. We just need 5 minutes. Tell her to get her butt down here right now. I stepped out of the elevator, and there they were. My father, his face purple with rage, jabbing his finger at a stoic security guard. My mother looking frazzled, clutching her purse like a shield. And Liam pacing back and forth like a caged animal. They looked unhinged. They looked completely out of control. Usually, seeing them like this triggered a deep sense of responsibility in me. Today, I just felt a profound sense of secondhand embarrassment. "Dad," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the chaos. They all whipped around to face me. "Maya." Mom scurried forward, looking like she was about to grab me, but she stopped short when she saw the expression on my face. "Maya, what is the meaning of this? We got a letter from some lawyer? A cease and desist? Have you lost your mind?" "It's not a joke, Mom," I said. I kept my distance, staying near the elevator bank. "You canceled the cabin access," Liam shouted, stepping in front of his mother. "Ashley has vendors scheduled to go up there on Friday. You can't just lock us out. It's my cabin, Liam," I said, my voice flat. "And I can, and did, lock you out." "We are your family," Dad bellowed, his voice booming across the lobby. People were stopping to watch. My coworkers returning from their coffee break were staring. Clients waiting for meetings were openly gawking. "A family doesn't deliberately lie to a daughter to keep her from a wedding," I said. "A family doesn't steal a kid's inheritance to go on a cruise." Dad froze. His eyes darted around the lobby, suddenly aware of his audience. "We can discuss this at home," he hissed, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "Get in the car, Maya." He used his command voice, the one that had worked on me since I was a child, the obey or else voice. I didn't budge. "No," I said. "What did you just say to me?" He took an aggressive step toward me. The security guard, a large, calm man named Frank, moved between us. "Sir, I'm going to need you to back up," Frank said. "This is my daughter," Dad spat. "This is an employee in this building," Frank countered. "And you are creating a public disturbance. You need to leave. She needs to sign this," Liam yelled, pulling a crumpled paper from his jacket pocket. It looked like a rental agreement for a party vendor. "Just sign the authorization, Maya. Don't be such a witch about this. Just sign it, and we'll forgive you for the whole lawyer thing." They were standing in my place of business, humiliating me in front of everyone, and they were offering to forgive me. The sheer audacity was stunning. I looked at Liam, at the pure panic in his eyes. He wasn't sad about a broken relationship with his sister. He was terrified because his primary source of funding had just been cut off. "I'm not signing anything," I said. "You can direct any further communication to Isabella Rossi. Her name is on the letter." "You are tearing this family apart," Mom wailed. She began to cry, loud, performative sobs, her eyes flicking around to see who was watching. "Over one little mistake. One mistake with an invitation and you burn everything to the ground." "It wasn't a mistake," I said quietly, "and it wasn't just one thing. It was a lifetime of things." I looked at Frank, the security guard. "I need to get back to work now, Frank. Can you please escort them out?" "Of course, Miss Pierce," he said. He turned to my father. "Sir, you and your family need to leave the premises now, or I will be forced to call the police for trespassing." "You wouldn't," Dad said, looking at me. His face was a mask of disbelief. He genuinely could not comprehend that his authority had vanished. "I would," I said. "I really, truly would." I turned my back on them and pressed the elevator button. Behind me, the drama continued. Dad was arguing, Mom was sobbing, Liam was cursing, but I didn't turn around. The elevator doors slid open. I stepped inside. As the doors began to close, I saw Frank calmly but firmly guiding them toward the revolving glass doors. I saw my father look back at me, his face a storm of confusion and rage. He had lost. The doors sealed me in. The silence of the elevator was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I went back to my desk and sat down. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. It was pure adrenaline. My colleague from the next cubicle, Sarah, leaned over the partition. "Is everything okay, Maya?" she asked in a low voice. I heard shouting. "Everything is perfect," I said, picking up my mouse, just taking out the trash. I realized in that moment that the worst thing I had ever feared, a public confrontation, a massive scene, had just happened, and I had survived it. The world didn't end. In fact, for the first time, the world had seen the truth. Frank saw it. Brenda saw it. My co-workers saw it. They saw who the aggressors were. I wasn't their secret keeper anymore. That evening, I was bone-deep exhausted. The adrenaline crash hit me the second I walked through my apartment door. I ordered a pizza and sat on my couch, just staring at the black screen of the TV. My phone was still buzzing intermittently with blocked numbers, but I was following Isabella's advice. "Let it go to voicemail," she had said. "Every call is just more evidence for a harassment claim if we need it." Around 8 p.m., there was a knock at my door. I tensed, my heart jumping. I crept to the door and looked through the peephole. It wasn't my parents. It wasn't Liam. It was my Uncle Ben. Ben was my mother's older brother, the quiet rock of the family. He never got involved in the drama. At holidays, he'd sit in the corner with a glass of whiskey and just observe. He was the one who had sent the text that started this whole avalanche. I opened the door. He looked worn out, wearing an old trench coat despite the clear night, and clutching a worn leather briefcase. "Can I come in, Maya?" he asked. "If you're here on their behalf to tell me to make peace, you can save your breath," I said, my hand tight on the doorknob. He shook his head. "I'm not here for them." I stepped back and let him in. He walked into my living room and set the briefcase on the coffee table. He kept his coat on, looking deeply uncomfortable, like a man on a mission he'd rather not be on. "I heard about what happened at your office today," he said. "Liam called me. He wanted me to call you, to talk some sense into you." "And?" I asked, crossing my arms. "And I told him to go to hell," Ben said quietly. I blinked. I had never heard my uncle even raise his voice. He sat on the edge of my sofa. He rested a hand on the briefcase. "Maya, I've been watching this for 35 years, he said, his voice heavy. "I watched how they treated you, even as a kid. Liam got the brand new bicycle. You got the hand-me-down. Liam got a private tutor. You were told to just try harder. I saw it all, and I kept my mouth shut. I don't know what I thought. I thought it was just their way. I figured you were tough enough to handle it." He looked up at me, his eyes filled with a sad regret. "But when they lied to you about the wedding, that was just evil. That wasn't just favoritism anymore. That was pure cruelty." He clicked open the 2 brass latches on his briefcase. It was stuffed with old papers, printed emails, and handwritten notes. "What is all this?" I asked. "I was the executor for your grandmother's estate," Ben said. "And for a long time I handled the paperwork for some of the family investments before your father took it all over. I was copied on a lot of emails. I kept copies of everything." He pulled out a stapled packet of emails, read the top one, he said. I took it. It was an email from my father to my mother, dated 7 years ago. The subject line was Liam's tuition. I read the body of the email. "Caroline, the bank denied Liam's student loan application again. We need the money by the end of the month. I think we need to ask Maya. She just got that big promotion. Let's wait until she's in a good mood. Maybe after we take her out for her birthday. Tell her it's just a temporary loan. She won't push for a contract if we make it about family. Tell her how proud we are of her first. I felt the blood drain from my face. Tell her how proud we are of her first. They had scripted it. They had planned to use my own birthday celebration as a setup, dangling their approval like a carrot to get my money. I remembered that dinner. I remembered Dad giving a toast to me. I remembered feeling so happy, so seen. And then, over dessert, Mom had brought up the tuition money. I had agreed instantly, high on the rare praise. It was a long con. "There's more," Ben said, his face grim. He handed me another one. This was from my mother to Liam just 2 years ago. "Don't worry about getting the keys to the cabin. Your sister pays for everything, but she knows deep down it's for the family. Just tell her you miss spending time with her and she'll hand them over. She's desperate for us to like her. She's desperate for us to like her." I dropped the paper. It fluttered to the carpet. "They knew," I whispered. "They knew exactly what they were doing the whole time." "They preyed on your goodness, Maya," Ben said, his voice thick with a quiet rage. "They knew you wanted their love, and they sold you cheap scraps of it for tens of thousands of dollars." I sank down onto the floor. I didn't feel like crying. I felt physically ill. For my entire life, I had believed I was the problem. I was too intense, too serious, too difficult. I thought if I just gave a little more, fixed one more problem, paid one more bill, I would finally be worthy of their love. But I was never the problem. I was the solution. I was the mark. "Why are you showing me all of this now?" I asked my uncle. "Because you're finally fighting back," he said. "And I wanted you to have the proof that you're not crazy. You're not being mean or vindictive. You are waking up." He reached back into the briefcase and pulled out a faded checkbook. "And one more thing," he said. "Your grandmother left you some money when she passed. $10,000 back in 2012. It was for your college graduation." "I never got that," I said numbly. "Mom told me Grandma didn't have anything left to give." "She did," Ben said. "She left it specifically for you. Your father cashed the bond. He forged your signature. I found the canceled certificate in her old estate files." He handed me a photocopy. There it was. My name, Maya Pierce, written in my father's unmistakable scrawl. Forgery, a felony. This wasn't just a toxic family. This was criminal. I stood up, walked to the kitchen counter, and grabbed my phone. I dialed Isabella Rossi's personal cell, a number she had given me for emergencies only. "Maya," she answered, her voice sharp with concern. "It's after 9 p.m. Is everything okay?" "No," I said. "My Uncle Ben is here, and he has proof." "Proof of what?" "Proof of fraud," I said. My own voice now as cold and hard as steel. Proof of forgery. Proof of a long-term, premeditated plan to manipulate me financially. I have emails where they literally script how to get money from me. I have a forged inheritance certificate. There was a pause on the line. Then I heard the sound of rustling papers. "Do not let your uncle leave your apartment," Isabella said, her voice now electric. "I'm calling Mark. We're coming over. Now." "Tonight?" "Maya, if there's a forged financial instrument, the statute of limitations could still be open, depending on when you officially discovered the crime, and the emails prove intent. This changes everything. We're no longer just on the defense regarding the cabin. We are going on the offensive." I hung up the phone and looked at Ben. "My lawyer is on her way," I said. Ben just nodded, a look of profound relief on his face. "Good. I'll make some coffee." I looked at the pile of papers on my floor. It was the script of my life, written by the people who were supposed to be my biggest fans. The betrayal was absolute. But so was the clarity. I wasn't their daughter. I was their mark. and the con was officially over. By midnight, my small living room had become a war room. Isabella was photographing the emails with her phone. Mark was examining the photocopy of the forged certificate with a small magnifying glass. Uncle Ben sat in the armchair, quietly answering their rapid-fire questions. "This is a pattern of predatory behavior," Mark muttered. "This is textbook undue influence." Isabella looked at me, her eyes blazing. "This isn't a misunderstanding, Maya," she said, echoing my own realization. "This is a criminal enterprise, and we are going to bury them with it." I looked at the mountain of evidence. I thought about my father screaming in my office lobby. I thought about my mother's crocodile tears. "Do it," I said. "File everything." The morning after Uncle Ben opened his briefcase, the war truly began. But this time, I wasn't fighting with tearful arguments in a kitchen. I was fighting with certified mail. Isabella Cruz moved with brutal efficiency. She sent a new packet of documents to my parents and Liam. It wasn't just a letter this time. It was a thick, heavy envelope containing high-resolution copies of the emails and a crystal-clear image of the forged inheritance certificate. The cover letter was short and savage. "We are in possession of evidence demonstrating a multi-year pattern of fraud, financial manipulation, and forgery. Ms. Pierce is willing to forego pressing criminal charges in exchange for your immediate agreement to a complete and permanent severance of all financial and personal ties. Any further contact with our client will be considered harassment, and we will proceed with filing a police report." It was the nuclear option. I stayed home from work for 2 days, half expecting a battering ram at my door. I expected screaming threats, a full-scale siege. But all I got was silence, the silence of bullies who have finally been caught. The real fallout began about a week later. My phone buzzed with a call from a local number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail, as instructed. I listened to the message. "Hi, Maya, it's your Aunt Carol. Ben showed me the emails. He told us what really happened with the wedding date. I wanted to say I had no idea. Your mother told all of us you were on an urgent work trip to Asia and couldn't be there. We all thought you chose not to come. I am so sorry, honey. We just didn't know." I sat there, holding my phone. My mother hadn't just lied to me. She had preemptively slandered me to the entire family, painting me as a cold, career-obsessed sister who couldn't be bothered to show up. Another call came an hour later. It was my cousin, Mark. "Maya, man," I heard. "That is so messed up. Liam is on Facebook throwing a fit, saying you're trying to bankrupt him over a grudge, but nobody's buying it." Uncle Ben posted the receipts. Literally. I logged into Facebook for the first time in weeks. Liam had written a long, rambling post about his vindictive, jealous sister who was trying to ruin his life. But the comments section was a bloodbath. Uncle Ben had simply commented with a single image, the email where my parents plotted to emotionally manipulate me for the loan. Underneath it, the tide had turned. "This is shameful, Liam," one aunt wrote. "You guys need professional help," a cousin added. "For years, my parents had controlled the narrative because I was too broken to fight back. Now that the truth was out, their story was crumbling." Then came the financial repercussions. Mark, the accountant, had sent official notice to the banks, revoking my name as a co-signer and guarantor on all of Liam's business loans. His small, trendy gastropub, the Pierce Grill, had been floating on a line of credit secured almost entirely by my stellar credit score. Without my backing, the bank reviewed Liam's abysmal credit history and called the loan due. They demanded immediate collateral, or they would freeze all his business accounts. I heard the news from Jenna, who was still friends with Liam's wife Ashley on social media. Ashley just posted that they're taking a hiatus from the restaurant due to unforeseen financial challenges. Jenna read to me over the phone, and it looks like she's staying at her mother's house. Apparently, she had no idea the whole business was a house of cards built with your money. She thought Liam was some self-made success story. The entire facade was imploding. Liam's marriage was on the rocks. His business was shuttered. My parents were being ostracized by their own siblings. A small, familiar pang of guilt hit me. It was a deep-rooted habit, that urge to rush in and fix everything. I could make one call. I could sign one document. I could save his restaurant. I could end all this pain. But then I looked at the kitchen counter, where the wedding invitation with the wrong date still sat. They didn't care about my pain when they erased me. I took a deep breath, and I did nothing. I didn't call the bank. I didn't call Liam. I just let it fall. 3 weeks passed in heavy silence from my immediate family. But it was a new kind of silence. It wasn't the silence of being ignored. It was the silence of being feared. I went back to work, walking with my head held a little higher. Frank, the security guard, gave me a respectful nod every morning. He knew I had won. Then, the final move came. It arrived through Isabella. "They want a meeting," she told me over the phone. "Your parents and Liam. They've hired a lawyer, a bottom feeder from what I can tell. They want to settle this misunderstanding before we file the final asset separation agreement." "Is there any point?" I asked. "Legally? No. We have them dead to rights," Isabella said. "But emotionally, sometimes you need to look them in the eye one last time to know in your soul that you're truly done." I thought about it. If I didn't go, they would spend the rest of their lives telling themselves and anyone who would listen that I was just being manipulated by my shark lawyer. They'd believe I was still their weak, quiet Maya, just being led astray. I needed them to see the new me. "Okay," I said, "set it up, but not at their house, not at the cabin." "My office," Isabella said, "neutral ground, my turf." The meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday afternoon. I wore my best power suit, a sharp navy blue. I wore heels that made a satisfying sharp click on the marble floors. I didn't dress for them. I dressed for me. It was my armor. When I walked into the conference room, they were already there, looking small and defeated. Mom looked 10 years older, her face pale and drawn. Dad was slumped in his chair, his usual bravado gone. Liam sat with his arms crossed, glaring at the table. Ashley was nowhere to be seen. They all looked up when I entered. Mom's eyes immediately filled with tears. "Maya, oh honey," she started to rise. "Sit down," I said. I didn't raise my voice, I just said it. And she sat. I took the chair at the head of the long table. Isabella sat at my right. "We are here to execute the final severance agreement," Isabella announced, her voice all business. "This document states that Maya has zero ongoing financial liability for any of your past, present, or future debts. It also codifies that the mountain cabin is her sole and exclusive property, and you are all permanently barred from entering the premises. In exchange for your signatures, Ms. Pierce will not press criminal charges for the forged certificate." "Charges?" Dad sputtered. "It was family money. Grandma would have wanted me to manage it for her." "Grandma left it to me," I said, my voice like ice. "You stole it. That's a felony, Dad, not management." He flinched as if I'd slapped him. "Maya, please," Mom whimpered, her voice trembling. "This is too much. We're your family. We made one mistake with the wedding. We know that was wrong. But to cut us off completely? To ruin your brother's business?" "I didn't ruin his business," I said. "I just stopped paying for it. If his business couldn't stand on its own 2 feet, It wasn't a business. It was my personal charity. Liam slammed his hand on the table. You're loving this, aren't you? You think you're so powerful now. I looked him straight in the eye. I'm not enjoying it, I said honestly. This is a tragedy. It's tragic that the only way this family could function was if I paid for everything and never had an opinion. We loved you, Mom cried. We always included you in everything. You invited me to a wedding on a day that had already passed, I said. The room went silent. It was the one simple fact they could not spin, the one truth that sliced through all their fog and gaslighting. We just thought, Dad started, then faltered. We thought it would be better. You're always so critical. I'm not critical, I said. I'm observant. And you didn't like being observed. You wanted my money, but you didn't want my awareness. I slid the stack of papers across the table. Sign them, I said. And if we don't, Liam challenged, his last gasp of defiance. Then Isabella calls the district attorney's office about the forgery, I said calmly. And I will personally sue you, Liam, for the $65,000 in personal loans for which I have text messages and bank statements as proof. And I will win. They stared at the papers. They looked at each other. They finally, truly understood. The Bank of Maya was closed, and the assets were being liquidated. Dad picked up the pen first, his hand shaking. He signed. Mom signed next, sobbing quietly. You'll regret this, Maya, she whispered. You'll be all alone. I've been alone in this family for 35 years, I replied. At least now I'm free. Liam was the last to sign. He scribbled his name and threw the pen down. Happy now? He sneered. I gathered my copies of the signed agreement. No, I said, standing up. I'm not happy. But for the first time in a very long time, I'm safe. Maya, Mom whispered, a desperate last-ditch plea. Will we see you for Christmas? I looked at her, and I saw the depth of her delusion. She still thought this was just a fight. She still thought, after everything, that I would just come back. No, Mom, I said. You won't. I turned and walked out of the conference room. Isabella followed. I didn't look back. I walked out of the law office and into the bright afternoon sun. The city air felt different, cleaner somehow. I got in my car and just drove. I didn't go home. I drove north. 3 hours later, as dusk was settling, I pulled into the gravel driveway of the mountain cabin. The sky was a deep, bruised purple, and the first stars were beginning to appear. The cabin stood silent and strong among the pines. I walked up the steps and punched in my new code. The lock chirped and swung open. Inside, the house was cool and smelled of cedar and wood smoke. I walked through the rooms. They were mine. No ghosts of obligations. No lingering expectations. No one was waiting for me to fix their problems. I walked out onto the back deck, and I saw 2 figures sitting in the Adirondack chairs, looking out over the valley. Jenna turned, her face breaking into a huge grin. She held up a glass of wine. You did it, she said. Next to her, Uncle Ben smiled. He looked more at peace than I had ever seen him. We used the guest code you sent, Ben said. I hope that was all right. It was perfect, I said, sinking into the empty third chair. Jenna handed me a glass of wine. How'd it go? She asked. They signed, I said. It's over. We sat there in comfortable silence for a long time, watching the last light fade from the sky. The Milky Way began to smear itself across the darkness. I thought about my mother's last words to me. You'll be all alone. I looked at Jenna, my friend who had shown up in the middle of the night with wine and chips to guard my broken heart. I looked at Uncle Ben, the man who had kept a secret archive for decades, waiting for the right moment to give me the weapons I needed to save myself. I wasn't alone. I had just been searching for family in all the wrong places. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a notification from my banking app. Scheduled payment canceled. Liam Pierce, auto insurance. Another one popped up. Scheduled payment canceled. Caroline Pierce, joint credit card. The money was staying where it belonged. My energy was staying where it belonged. My life was finally completely my own. I took a sip of wine. It tasted crisp and sharp and wonderful. You know, I said quietly, to the stars as much as to them. I used to think I built this cabin for them. I built it so we would have a place to be a family. And now? Ben asked gently. I looked out at the dark, vast expanse of the mountains. Now, I said, it's a home. I leaned my head back, closing my eyes. The knot of tension that I had carried in my shoulders for as long as I could remember, that constant, low-grade hum of anxiety, was simply gone. Family isn't just whose blood you share, I said, finally giving voice to the thought that had been solidifying in my mind for weeks. It's who doesn't demand you bleed for them. Jenna clinked her glass against mine. To that, she said. I closed my eyes and just listened to the sound of the wind sighing through the pine trees. I was Maya Pierce. I was 35 years old. I had lost a mother, a father, and a brother. But as I sat there in the peaceful darkness, surrounded by the people who truly saw me, I knew the real truth. I hadn't lost a thing. I had finally found myself.